the Zoom to make sure the audio is being picked up. Can you hear me, Darren? Got it. All right. Thank you very much. And we are on air.
All righty. So I'll call this study session to order. Our first item of business is the annual Boards and Committees Leadership Summit, which will be sort of wrangled probably by Kelly and Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's good to see you this evening, this afternoon, and good to see everybody, all these faces on Zoom land. Thank you for joining us. You may recall this is our third annual Board and Committee Leadership Summit. Past topics have included project coordination between committees, and we've gotten to some nitty-gritty, really lovely bylaw review, nuts and bolts stuff last year, and we're still working on some of those things, and perhaps not as far along on the bylaw part as I want it to be, but we are still making progress on it, and I do plan to bring that part to council this year. But the topics tonight are a little different, and it's a little driven by council and some of the things staff has seen and been working on the last year. So I'm going to introduce my staff colleagues for this presentation, which, by the way, we don't have a PowerPoint because we want this to be a discussion, which we appreciate is a little complicated on Zoom, but we want this to be a discussion between the board and committee leadership and the city council. So we'll do some quick introductions. Once my colleagues introduce themselves, then I have a list of our committees, and because faces move, I'll just call out the committees and we'll quickly recognize who from each committee is here. We invited, of course, the entire public was welcome to come, but we specifically invited staff liaisons and the board or committee chairs. So we'd like them to introduce themselves so everyone's aware of who's in the Zoom room. But then we have questions, and we really just want to set this up to be as informal and as productive a discussion as we can between our committee leaders and our city council. So I'm Scott Stoffer, city recorder. One of the things I am lucky enough to work on is helping with the board and committee interview process and kind of the tracking of terms and some of those logistical support things. My co-workers who are helping me with this presentation are Kelly, Jason, and John. So Kelly, you want to just say hello?
Sure. Hi, I'm Kelly Brooks. I'm the assistant city manager. And in terms of boards and committees, I am the staff liaison to our Parks and Recreation Board. So I spend time with them once a month. And then I also manage our our communication and engagement work here at the city. So that has a lot to do. Our focus area tonight is talking about some new ways that we've been working to engage the public during a pandemic and to see what you all think about them. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jason.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Wax. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the city. And as my title probably tells you a lot about what I do, I work internally with all of our staff about how we do our community engagement, but also with our neighbor associations and the boards and commissions. And that's kind of what I'd like to talk with a lot too about tonight, is basically how we go about doing that, the opportunities that we might see, ways that we can help, things like that. You probably get a lot of emails from me on a regular basis with my Friday updates. So you may know my name, but not my face. So here I am.
And John? Yep.
And I'm John Hennington. I am the Equity Program Manager for the City of Milwaukee. I have been here about 2 months, so excited to get to work here at the city, and looking forward to meeting all of you, hopefully in person when we can do that again. But my work with the city is involved with our internal focus with our employees, external as we work with the community, and then also facilitating community discussions around equity.
Thank you. And I just want to say it's a pleasure to get to work with all three of those folks on the city side. And I do agree with John. I look forward to us being able to be in the office together. So quickly jumping, I have a short list that I just did off the top of my head. So I apologize for any committee that I missed, but I'll just say the committee name. And then if the chair and liaison want to just say a quick hello, that'd be great. So we'll start with the Arts Committee.
Hello. Do you want anything else?
Maybe say your role with the Arts Committee.
I'm Jordan Imla. I'm the city staff liaison with the Arts Committee. But I don't know if Hamid's here tonight, though.
I don't think I've seen Hamid hop on. I guess if you're the liaison and your chair's not there, just you can say the name like Jordan just did. Hamid Shabata Bennett is the chair of the Arts Committee. Thank you, Jordan. Audit Committee. Here you go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Dennis. I'm the finance director, and I'm the liaison with the audit committee. And Max Stilson is the chair, but I don't see him on here tonight either.
I don't see him either, but thank you, Bonnie. CUAB.
Hi, I'm Peter Passarelli. I'm the Public Works Director. I'm the staff liaison for the CUAB as well. Also, Steve Adams is also sort of the staff liaison. And Joel Bergman is our chair.
Hi, everyone.
Joel, thank you, Peter. And I thought I did see Steve Adams' name appear on the Zoom land. So, Steve, if you're here, did you want to say hi?
I can. I was going to say hi more with the PSAC committee, but I can say hi with CUAB. So I'm Steve Adams. I'm city engineer. I help Peter with CUAB, and I'm also the liaison with the PSAC committee who does public safety, sidewalks and bikes and whatnot. And most of you are familiar with that.
Since we are recording for folks who might watch later, PSAC and CUAB are...
CUAB stands for Citizens Utility Advisory Board, and PSAC is the Public Safety Advisory Committee.
Was CUAB recently changed to Community Utility Advisory Board?
It was discussed. I don't think it's been officially adopted, but it is definitely, we were kind of waiting to wrap it up with some of the other bylaw changes, but yeah, soon to be referred to as the Community Advisory Board. Thank you. CUAB, DLC, which stands for Design and Landmarks Committee.
You stole my thunder there, Scott.
Sorry.
I'm Brett Kelver. I'm an associate planner with the city, and I'm the staff liaison for the DLC, or Design and Landmarks Committee. The current chair is Cynthia Schuster, and I don't believe she was able to be on the call tonight. But this group works on it. It responds to land use applications and participates in the review when they have to do with downtown design review or historic properties. And in the meantime, this group in particular has been working for the last couple of years to try to update our downtown design standards and guidelines.
Thank you, Brett. And while you were introducing the DLC, I just noticed that our Arts Committee chair joined us, Hamid. I don't see Hamid. Oh, there's Hamid. Hamid, we kind of did arts already, but if you wanted to say hello and introduce yourself real quickly.
Howdy, my name is Hamid Shibata Bennett. I'm chair of the Milwaukee Arts Committee. I'm also contract photographer for the city of Milwaukee and for North Clackamas Parks and Rec District.
Thank you, Hamid. We appreciate you being able to join us this afternoon. Let's see, we did DLC, KGNC, which is another fun government acronym, which maybe I'll let Peter say what KGNC stands for.
Hi, Peter Passarelli again. So KGNC is our Kellogg Good Neighbor Committee. So we work with Wes, who operates the treatment plant along just close to Milwaukee Bay Park, and look at ways to improve the facility site and really sort of be a good neighbor to the community. So we've got a group of 7 members from the community that participate in that. And
Peter,
Carolyn Tomei is the chair of that committee.
And I don't see her on this call.
I don't either.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Next up, Katie and the library board.
Hi, I'm Katie Newell, the director of the Letting Library. And Jess Stetson is my library board person, but she's not here. So it's just me.
I don't see her. Thank you, Katie. Next up, Planning Commission.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Weigel. I'm the planning manager, and I'm the staff liaison with the Planning Commission. And we do a lot of public engagement around a lot of our long-range planning projects. And my chair, our newly elected chair, is right here. Lauren, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Losfeld. I'm chair of the committee, Planning Commission.
Our one and only commission. Thank you, Lauren and Laura. Lauren and Laura. Oh, that's cool. Thank you very much. Next is PSAC, which was already defined, but that would be Steve. Are you Steve and Peter?
It's me. So again, Steve Adams, city engineer with PSAC. That's the Public Safety Advisory Committee. Rod Reynolds is the chair, and I have not seen him check in tonight. But Anything else?
Nope, I think that's good. Thank you. Yeah, I don't see Rob either. Kelly, Parb.
Lisa Lashbrook is currently our chair. I don't see her on the call. We are actually in between. She's about to term out, and so it's going to be Ben Johnson. So that might be part of it for us, but yeah, just me.
Thank you, Kelly.
Did you spell out what the acronym is? I missed it.
I did do it earlier. Parks and Recreation Board, but I shouldn't have done. I should have done it again. Parb. Parks and Recreation Board.
So noted. Thank you very much. Tree Board.
This is Peter again. So I am the staff liaison to the Tree Board, and our Tree Board chair is Kathleen Brennan Hunter, and I don't believe she's here tonight. But we work on all things related to trees and our urban forests in the community.
One of our most recently created standing committees too, boards. And then I just got a reminder, thank you, Bonnie. I did miss the budget committee.
No problem, Scott. So I'm Bonnie again. I'm the liaison for the budget committee, and John Stahl is the chair. I don't see him on here tonight. But the budget committee basically approves the budget towards city council for possible adoption every 2 years. And we are doing quarterly budget committee meetings, and we actually have one coming up in just a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Bonnie. Did I miss anybody? Did I cover all the committees? Not seeing any hands raised. Okay.
Well, I mean, I think it would be fun to say that Scott and I are the liaisons to the city council. So I'm Ann Ober, I'm the city manager. I think I'm the only staff person who actually hasn't spoken. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ann. Well, the real goal of this is to be a conversation. So I'm going to turn it over now to, I think, Jason. We talked about engagement going first, and then John, but really they'll say a little bit, and then you might have seen in the staff report, we've got some starter questions there. There is another item on the agenda for this meeting about 6 o'clock, and we do have presenters here for that, so we want to be respectful of the time. But other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason to go with engagement first.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, so really, like as Scott mentioned, I think the purpose of this is to get people talking who maybe don't get to talk around certain subjects. So I don't have a lot of introductory things to say other than that. I do have to say in terms of engagement, as we all know, last year has been kind of rough in terms of being able to do in-person events like we normally do. And I know a lot of the boards and committees get out and about in the community. They use our farmers market community booth quite a bit to kind of talk to people around their subject area. And we can't do that now. So, you know, one of the big things that I think we could talk about tonight for a little while is kind of like what that means for all of us. I know we've been working pretty hard to kind of up our game with the online engagement, using Engage Milwaukee, our website, our social media as much as we possibly can. Also, you know, doing our events virtually as best we can over the past year. So that I know in advance of this meeting, part of the homework, I guess you could say, was to kind of take a look at Engage Milwaukee, take a look at our internal engagement guide that we created that kind of helps staff develop engagement plans for projects or initiatives that we're doing. And we've been kind of working on that for really the last 2 years or so. So I didn't want to spend a lot of time talking. We have some questions that I think we can pose to the group and just kind of open the conversation up with those, unless anybody has any questions before we do that. Okay.
Before we start, it might be helpful for the purpose of the conversation just to remind folks that there's probably multiple sets of eyes watching the chat, and I'm diligently watching for raised hands. If you probably all familiar with that now in Zoom land, but if you open the participant list, you can raise your hand. So as the conversation develops, those are some of the tools to catch folks' attention. But yep.
Well, I mean, in the staff report, the questions that we kind of posed were there, and we can start with those and kind of, you know, obviously build on that if we need to as we just talk about it. So really the first question was, do you feel that your board and commission or committee ability to understand the community's values, needs, and aspirations around your topic area has been impacted by the inability to hold in-person meetings, events, or other activities over the past year? And if you have sort of specific examples around that, let us know. Anybody want to get started there?
Well, I mean, I would guess of the committees that we have here, the one that's, the one for which the chairs are here, the Arts Committee is probably the most impacted in that way, although the others are too. But I mean, the CUAB doesn't have that much public-facing activity. The Planning Commission, some. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear how the Arts Committee's been impacted, and also how Planning Commission has felt it.
Yeah, I'll quickly say that the Planning Commission has certainly been impacted. We tend to see a good number of public attending our meetings, and certainly providing testimony. We've been able to continue our meetings, and we do see some testimony, and we have gotten kind of some public interface during this time, but it's certainly slowed. And some of the hotter, more contested projects have seen, some peaks of attendance, but I'm just in general seeing a lot less folks kind of involved in the process.
Yeah, and before anybody, I also want to kind of switch that around too. If anybody has any places where they see that maybe more people are getting involved, because it's so, a little easier, obviously, if you have web access to sit at home and participate in some of these things.
I can speak to that, Jason. Certainly on our tree board, we've seen more people attending our meetings that aren't members of the tree board. In the past, when we had in-person meetings, it was generally limited to the tree board showing up. But having them on Zoom, we've had more people show up and sit in on the meetings. We also did do a small Arbor Day event that we had a turnout, a small turnout in, late October, I think. That worked out well. It was a COVID-friendly event. So, we made sure everybody kept their space, and but it was a well-attended event for that time.
And the Arts Committee has definitely been impacted, but we've also adapted. So many of our events got canceled, but we tried to throw a few events anyways. And last tail end of summer, we threw Milwaukee Porch Fest, which was a socially distant citywide concert over 4 weeks' time. The fourth one was delayed due to the wildfires. What a crazy time that was. And we've got another 3 weeks of Porch Fest in the works for springtime. We're just starting to plan that. Well, also, the Portland Winter Light Festival is going on, and it's also socially distanced too, where there's not central hubs, but it's scattered throughout the city in different areas. And we do have one Milwaukee location that's a part of the Portland Winter Light Festival. So check it out Friday and Saturday night. And we also held a mural unveiling for the Welcome to Milwaukee mural over by the Water Tower Park, featuring featuring some of our BIPOC community from Milwaukee's history. And so we've been cruising along, and we haven't had a lot of people come to our meetings, though we did just get introduced to one of the two new student liaisons, so high school age students who are now part of the Arts Committee. And the Milwaukee Museum is talking to us about a possible liaison position from them. So we're discussing that. But we're trying to make things happen in a pandemic world.
Your ingenuity has been kind of amazing, actually. So I mean, I think you guys have been leading on that in terms of just kind of figure out ways to bring people together safely. So.
that's definitely our goal is finding ways to bring us together and find our commonalities. And Milwaukee is all about community, and art and culture brings folks together.
I think I saw Councilor Nicodemus's hand up.
Yeah, I have a question, and I guess this goes to all the boards. So when face-to-face starts, will we continue to do Zoom so more people have access to go to meetings?
That's something the Planning Commission has actually discussed in the last couple months to make a part of our bylaws that we continue to have access to meetings via Zoom permanently. So we're definitely interested in that.
I think part of that conversation too that we were having at Planning Commission is that it opens the door for more people to be able to participate as Planning Commission members if they don't have to come in. A lot of people have families and it's not a great time to leave the house. So we would really like to see a way that I don't know how we talked about technology is evolving, right? And we may be able, I'm sure all places are facing the same question of, is there a way to kind of meld the experience so that people that want to be on site can be on site, but people that don't want to be on site don't have to be. So that's something that we would like to explore in the next year if it's at all possible. I'm sure lots of jurisdictions across the country are having the same conversation.
From the tree board, and I think the CUAB piece, I think we would like to continue doing the online Zoom meetings. It seems like we get a better turnout both from the members of those boards. It's easier for them. They don't have to make that drive in, but we also get a better turnout from the community. At least on the tree board side, we did on the community piece.
I think it's completely fair to say that the world has landed on video conferencing, and I don't think that's something we'll be retreating from anytime soon. I think it's also fair to remember some of our hybrid meetings have been less than stellar in terms of experience for folks on Zoom land. Very fluid situation, as we're all very familiar with. I don't see why we would relinquish our Zoom capabilities anytime soon. And so I would think that boards and committees can safely assume that for the immediate future, we'll continue to Zoom along. And then once we do return to more in-person situations, if your committee feels more comfortable or would prefer to meet on the Zoom situation, as long as the proper public noticing is done, as we have been doing, and as long as our state legislature doesn't, again, revisit the law and in some way curtails our ability to do that, I think they took steps last year, you may know, to make sure that we all could continue to meet in that mode. So I think Zoom is here to stay. I will be really curious to watch how the hybrid meeting situations unfold, because ideally, Star Trek's not that many centuries ahead of us. We should be able to talk to people on video screens while people are also in the same rooms and we can all hear each other. But I don't know if we're actually there quite yet. But certainly we'll jump along with it and do all we can to support your committees and our council to continue to do that. So I think you should plan on Zoom being a part, video conferencing being a part of your work for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, just from going to school board meetings, I've seen more teachers show up to school board meetings in Zoom than I ever have before. So it's been a blessing because people have been able to have more access to actually be able to participate. So,
yep.
One of our commissioners is pretty adamant about making sure that in the new City Hall location that we account and accommodate as much as possible what's necessary to have these meetings virtually. I'll put that note in for him.
Completely agree. I can guess as to maybe which commissioner that is, but I completely
already noted.
Already noted.
Yes,
and
in the system.
Sorry, Ann. A silver lining of our situation is that we are sitting in a point in time where we have a couple of years before we move up Main Street into a new facility, and we were already having that conversation because some of you may be familiar with the age of our current audiovisual setup, and we patch it together to keep it going. Well, we're very much looking forward to being able to invest in a quality situation and being able to have these Zoom experiences and to build that new Chambers AV situation will be definitely playing on what we're learning here. So if anybody has any comments or thoughts or has that silver bullet technology would be entertaining. I'd be open to hearing about that, but absolutely.
I'll comment a little bit about PSAC. I think things have gone pretty well. I think the very beginning, we had a couple rough meetings on trying to figure out how to get everybody in. And had to do a kind of a backdoor meeting one time because Zoom wasn't working. I had to go through Teams. So other than that, I think what I like about the video meetings are I can share information on anything that might be asked. So if someone asks about a certain project or asks about something, I can go grab that out of my files, bring it online and share it, and I can have it right there. Well, I remember at PSB when we had PSAC meetings, there were a couple of meetings where we couldn't get the TV system there to kind of link up and work. We don't really know how to use it. The police know how to use it. And so we had some rough times in-person meetings too. And a week and a half ago, I attended my first joint meeting. It was with the DMBA, which is the Downtown Milwaukee Business Association. They had, 4 or 5 people in a conference room and then another probably 10 phoning in. And the one thing you got to be careful of, if you're in the conference room, you don't know who's talking because you don't see people clearly. They kind of sit off the sides of the screen. So people in a conference room need to remember to introduce themselves so everybody else knows who is talking in that conference room. That was the one thing that was very difficult in that meeting.
I wonder if the city would be interested in like some camera switching systems in the new setup, maybe where 2 or 3 cameras can be set up and someone working a switcher is needed.
Certainly, cameras are an integral part of the AV operation setup, and we are lucky to work with Willamette Falls Studios out of Oregon City, who provide our AV services, and we do have 4 cameras in the room at the moment. We have 2 spare because of the old conference room. So camera setup and definitely part of what we're thinking about.
We also discussed that we need to have a process and a way, particularly for the Planning Commission, about how we use Zoom to mute folks when they need to be muted, or to just be able to control, I guess, some of the public interface and have a little bit more engagement there. And I think there's some training that needs to be done, both for like staff and also for the commissioner committee members, to be able to know how to interact best with the public. And it just feels like we're kind of learning as we go at this point. But bringing everybody up to speed on some of the lessons learned would probably be wise.
I'll just say one thing, if it's okay. We definitely, the Parks Committee, we've definitely used Zoom. It's been good. I'm really glad we've had it as a tool. I expect that we would continue to use it. I would just note that we don't have as many folks from boards and committees here as I would have liked. We got a lot of staff. And I'm not sure why, what happened with that piece of it, but I'll just speak to my own personal life. The Zoom overwhelm is kind of real too. And it's hard to kind of evaluate when you're just staring at like emails with different Zoom links, like which ones are important and which ones are the other. I mean, they all start to blend together in this massive cloud of online meetings. So I think in some ways we have this other issue now where you can meet and we do meet and there's not that space like around the time. I mean, you can have 5 of these a night, so how do we facilitate people using the tool without contributing to the overwhelm, I guess, is a question I have for all of you. So if you got tips, if you feel like you're interacting with another entity that's doing that well, I would love to hear what best practices people are using. So.
Jason, I know you've got a couple more questions, and I also want to make sure that John gets a chance to throw his questions out there as well. And I think there are some folks who might need to step off at 6. So if you want to throw out another question, Jason, we can get to that, and then maybe get to John here in about 5 minutes.
Councilor Heisey, did you have something you wanted to add? I just saw you're on.
Oh, no, it was just a real quick comment that I have felt that there is a magic that happens when everyone is in a room together too. So as much as I love that Zoom provides greater opportunity for people to be included in conversations and decision-making processes, I just kind of wanted to give a shout out for the fact that being together in person is also really valuable, and it's a different experience, particularly when you've got new members, it can really be valuable. So I hope that we are not looking at a future where everything is on Zoom all the time either, once we have the option of in person.
I would agree. As much as I love my basement, I'd like to get out of here at some point. So, well, just for the sake of time, and I know I don't want to steal all John's thunder, we already touched on equity a little bit when it comes to Zoom, but really the other part I just wanted to talk about and ask you for, it's almost like a PSA, and is really, the engagement plan, the engagement guide that we have that we use internally. I wanted to share that with the boards and commissions just so that you have an opportunity to kind of see how you might go about making an engagement plan if you wanted to make an engagement plan, both as a committee, but also for specific projects that you might be working on. I know, plenty of the, planning commission, work with the planners. There's lots of engagement that goes on there, but not all the committees engage and do that on a regular basis. So my question really is, if you're interested in an engagement plan, are there certain projects that you'd like to try to build one upon? And then, when you have that engagement plan, you're going to see some tools that you might be able to use, and one of those is Engagement Walkie. And so far we got it going, but there's opportunities there to do both very serious projects like we mostly have been doing, but there's also opportunities to do fun things. So that's something that I'd be happy to work on with your committee if you have ideas for how to use that platform to kind of reach out, especially now, to get feedback from the community or just engage in general. So if anybody has any ideas that you'd like to throw out before we move on to John, I'd be glad to hear them. Or we can do that later after the meeting.
Just really quick, I had the joy of working on a piece for the Engagement Walkie website with Jordan Imlaw and do a tour of the City Hall building, and that was pretty fun. It was nice to do a produced piece for folks where we could really give some clear messaging and clear vision and some nice visual imagery and such. And I'd be happy to help with more projects like that.
I know Natalie's been working with our tree board to sort of outline some opportunities to use Engagement Walkie. We've had a couple conversations over the last few months, so that's something certainly we're going to be using. That we'll be using that tool. So
yeah, and don't always look at it as like some of the most powerful tools on that platform are the more engaging ones, not just surveys, but ways for people to kind of engage with one another online in a facilitated way. So it can be really powerful in that way. So think of it using it that way as well. So
Jason, would you mind giving us a quick update on how many people are signed up, if you happen to know?
Yeah, I think we're about 440 people are registered. It grows every day a little bit. It has peaks, when we put something new on there, it usually spikes a little bit, and some more, more people. The Honk If You Love Milwaukee bumper sticker campaign worked actually quite well. So you'll probably see those around town on people's cars soon. I wanted to make sure that John had time, so I know we only have like 10 minutes left. So thanks everybody for your feedback, and please reach out to me if you are interested in using Engagement Walkie or building an engagement plan.
Thanks so much, Jason. I'll be brief because we do just have about 10 minutes left. So just a brief introduction to this question. As we all know, in the past year, there's been a reckoning around issues of race, particularly systemic racism and inequity in our country. And as coming out of that, the city council established as one of its priorities a goal centered on equity. So a question to start a discussion, and this is a conversation that we'll probably have over time. So, but just to start the conversation, wanted to ask you all, do you feel that your boards and commissions ability to understand, sorry, that's not my question. That is Jason's question. My question, what impacts do your boards and commissions have on members of our community who have not traditionally been involved? What could be done to invite and encourage individuals from marginalized groups to get involved? So still sort of tie into the issue of engagement, but who are we missing? Who are we not talking to? Who's not at the table? And how can we bring them to the table so that they can be part of the discussion as to how we shape our city?
Well, I'll pipe in. I've spent the last, whatever it's been now, 8 years working on getting folks engaged with the various boards and committees, because before we often had trouble even filling committees, period, let alone filling them with people who were going to be really actively engaged in it and start to cause some change. And what I've found is that the most powerful way to do that is literally individual conversations with people, discovering new people at the farmer's market or wherever, the library, any place you end up running into people and having good long conversations, and then saying, hey, you might think about, applying for this committee. I think you'd be really good on it. And you'd be surprised how often people have never even considered that they would, qualify or whatever, because it sounds sort of, like a big deal to be on a city committee. And it is, but it's in a small town like ours, it's also not hard to do. And we've had extraordinary committees, and it's been one-on-one reaching out. So I would answer that question by saying that that's probably how we would want to do it. And I had put some effort in that realm for a few years, and just, a little bit of luck here and there, but frankly not, hadn't done as well as I would have liked, I guess I'll put it that way.
One of the things I heard at one of the listening sort of sessions that we held, one of the things I learned that didn't really surprise me, but just sort of reinforced, I guess, Mark, that sort of education piece that folks don't even know that there are opportunities to serve. And so, whatever we can do, all of us, big C, little c city, to, really make sure people are aware of those opportunities, I think will go a long way. Folks who really care and are engaged in making our city better in ways, in their own realms, I think, in their own spheres, might be willing to also contribute their talents to some of these boards and committees too.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly say, because I have to step out, I'm actually have a hearing in front of the city Corvallis tonight. But John, we've talked as the Planning Commission about how we don't have enough representation across our committee, and I keep saying committee, commission. And I think it's a real challenge, and it's something I would love to see start to shift. But the folks and the individuals who are aware of the openings when they become available and who we're talking to, I would just love to see more representation on the commission and in the committees as well, and outreach to those groups to bring them in, similar to what the mayor is saying. And also just understanding what are the roadblocks that bring people to a hearing. I think that being physically in front of a group is one of the major roadblocks that we have. So having to be there to sit through a meeting until your moment on the agenda. Having to state your address and who you are and represent yourself. I mean, for some people, that's difficult, something that would cause them to stay home. And I think we really need to just rethink that. Is it necessary? What do we need to get out of folks? Do they physically need to be in a room? Do they, and how do we reach out? A lot of what happens in terms of hearings with the commission is spread by word of mouth. Folks, one or two really active and involved folks will get the mailer and they'll read it and then they'll absorb it and then they will just go by foot through the neighborhood and stomp the pavement to get others to hear, hey, this is something that concerns you, and they'll knock doors. So it works. When that happens, the room is full and we have a really great audience and discussion. So I'll just put that out there and apologize for having to leave a couple minutes late or early here. Thanks, everybody.
I just wonder, being a teacher, who comes in contact with more community members than a teacher? So is there a way to like collaborate with PTA? I know at our school we have the Madres group. And so that's always good to get in front of folks, or a good way to get in front of folks. Maybe working with the union, because, you know, parents will listen, for the most part, will listen to teachers. And so if a teacher comes along and says, hey, this is a really good opportunity, I think, you know, you'd be really good. I don't know how that works, but I mean, I'm guessing with PTA and at least through the union, that would be a good way to get word out to folks.
And piggybacking on that, you know, students too, some of the best, most representative engagement that we had was through visioning. And it was because we had a youth advisory committee, you know, sort of subcommittee through that organizing process. And you know, Ascension, the folks that, you know, and even, I think, you know, even the Madres, I think there were individual sort of targeted outreach to groups in that process. So I definitely think the schools, you know, whether it's through the teachers or the parent groups or the student groups, you know, that's a great conduit for sure.
Well, and I think some of our NDAs have ties to their PTOs. Some do, some don't. But yeah, in terms of city boards, we have never tied those things together. And so thinking about how we can do that better, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and I know that for the comprehensive plan and now the comprehensive plan implementation, we've been going out to the school district to try to go through the school district to advertise our events and advertise the surveys. We've also been going through trying to send out some printed versions of our materials, all in Spanish, trying to kind of get around that divide of folks that might have access to computers and might not have access, and trying to figure out the best way to contact them, and trying to engage more of those folks that we know haven't been coming to the table. Like, we're getting ready to do some meetings in a box for the Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee. And we're going to have Spanish speaking and run meetings in Spanish. So we're trying all of the things that we're trying all of the things. We're going to see, we're also involving renters, trying to get more renters to come to the table, because we know we don't get a lot of renter representation in our processes. So trying to find those people who are renters and saying, hey, would you be willing to host a meeting? Going to that idea that people generally respond better if it's a personal ask, right? So trying to find those people that will go out and ask people to participate, and then actually let those people kind of run in partnership with city staff the meetings themselves. So you're kind of you're building on those affinity groups and kind of getting access to people that you don't normally get access to.
One of the, I was going to say, one of the actions we identified in our urban forest management plan as it relates to outreach and stewardship was ensuring that our outreach efforts are designed to engage underrepresented community members and then try to evaluate those outreach efforts. It's been really sort of difficult to do that this year. So we haven't spent a whole lot of time there, but we've identified that as an action. It's something that's important for the tree board to focus some of their efforts on, as well as how where we plant trees in our community. We want to make sure that we're looking at opportunities throughout the community with a focus on communities that might, or neighborhoods that might have some economic, lower economic, or what's the word I want to use?
Socioeconomic.
Socioeconomic. No, that's not the word. Just lower income places where the lower income neighborhoods are. Yeah.
I just want to say from the Parks Board perspective, and I'm sorry it's me and not Lisa, but the efforts that council's made and staff and I know Scott and Ann and working with the student members of the boards, at least in terms of that board, it has made a difference. We have much more diversity on the Parks Board than when I started 3 years ago. And it has changed the conversations that we have. And they're wonderful. I mean, just the questions that are asked. I mean, when we're talking about shifting, I mean, they were talking about the wakeboarding issue, and they asked the question, well, where does it go? If it's not here, who's impacted? And what families, what could we do to change this so that, other families would come, or, how are we showing people that all people that they're welcome and that we want to involve them? I mean, it's awesome, actually. So, I mean, I have all ages. I have got teachers, and now thanks to Councilor Nicodemus, I got 2 teachers, and it's really great. So I know we've got work to do, and I know there's a lot more to do, but I'll just say from my board, it's been awesome. And I think those efforts that you're making when you're interviewing people, when you're thinking through how we can bring different folks in, it at least with my group, it is making a difference in how we work.
I know we're just a couple minutes over, so I just wanted to just quickly thank you all for that conversation. Hope you will continue to have these conversations on your boards and commissions and committees, and add one question to that. When you're thinking about who to bring into the room and who's absent, also think about what questions can you ask on their behalf. Just something to think about. Who is not here, and what aren't we thinking about in this conversation? So thank you all for the discussion tonight, and I hope to talk to you all more soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jason and Kelly. Conversation, we were honestly not sure how it would go in Zoom land, and I appreciate everyone's participation. So we could always go longer, it seems like, even in Zoom. So thank you. And let me or Kelly or John or Jason know if we can continue to support in any way. But with that, Mr. Mayor, I think that is it for the first item on the agenda.
All right, great. That was a really good conversation. So thank you, everyone that was involved in that. Our next item is a parks update with Assistant City Manager Kelly Brooks.
Hi, so I'm going to quickly hand this off to North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. We have 3 fine folks here representing NCPRD tonight. Laura Zentner, Heather Cook, and do I see Candy? Is Candy on here? Candy Ho. Yeah, so thank you for all being here. Really appreciate it. It is called a Parks Update. I should have called it an NCPRD update because they are going to talk not just about parks, but about NCPRD itself and kind of the many different things that they have going on. Thank you for the questions that I did get in advance. I passed those along, and I will just chime in as needed. Laura, do you get to kick it off, or does Heather get to kick it off?
I will be kicking it off, and then
great.
We have, if Candy could get controls to do the PowerPoint, that'd be great.
Okay.
So good evening, Mayor Gamba, City Council members. My name is Laura Zentner, and I am the Director of Business and Community Services. I'd like to just take a minute to introduce our team. With me, I have Candy Ho, who's the Acting Director of North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Heather Cook is the Acting Planning and Development Manager for NCPRD. We're really excited to be here tonight, and we want to thank you for the opportunity to present. So we're going to be talking about several updates. So I'll just give you a quick overview. We're going to give you an update on the NSPRD director recruitment. We're going to just do a quick update on the Happy Valley withdrawal. We're going to do an update on the DAC, which is the District Advisory Committee, used to be called the District Advisory Board. We'll be doing an update on that. And then finally, we'll do an update on the programming and then some capital projects, including Milwaukee Bay Park. So if you could please hold your questions until we get to the end of the presentation, it would be much appreciated. So the first update I want to share with you is the NSPRD director recruitment. As some of you may know, Scott Archer was the director for 4.5 years. He recently left to become the city administrator for the city of Canby. We were really sad to see him go. He was an amazing director, and it was a huge loss for us. But good for him for moving to the city of Canby. That's a great place to be also. But with his departure, we have a vacancy that we need to fill. So we are planning to do a nationwide recruitment. We're going to kick that off this month in February, and it usually takes about 2 to 3 months. So we anticipate that we'll probably have a new director on board probably in May, hopefully in May. So just wanted to give you that update. Next, I wanted to share with you just a couple of things from the Happy Valley withdrawal from the district. There's a lot of history here. Obviously, you guys are aware of that, so I won't go into that other than to say there were multiple lawsuits that related to the withdrawal, and ultimately it was the sentiment of both parties that it would be best to allow Happy Valley to withdraw from NSPRD. So we ended up with a settlement agreement that had multiple items in the settlement agreement. I'll just touch on a couple. One was that we made a large payment that represented the system development charges that were actually collected within the city of Happy Valley, city limits. We transferred 5 parks, and they're showing on the screen here. Those are parks that are in the city limits, again, of the city of Happy Valley. So we have Village Green, Southern Lights, Ashley Meadows, Hidden Falls, and then Mount Talbert. And then finally, and probably the most important, is that we locked in the boundary that existed at the time we signed the agreement. And what that does is it really ensures that we have long-term financial stability for the district. And again, we locked in that boundary, and that ensures that the size of the district doesn't decrease as the city of Happy Valley annexes property. So you could have a situation where they annex a property. It would be in NSPRD, so that person could be in the district and in the city in the future, just so you're aware, but they will stay in the district, and we would continue to collect the taxes. So this is just a map of the district. You can see the new boundaries. Wanted to share that with you. So moving forward, NSPRD remains the second largest parks district in Oregon with over 105,000 residents. Those district residents still have access to the same great services and programs, including discounted rates and priority registration. And our intent is to focus on new projects and exciting opportunities that benefit our district residents, such as the Milwaukee Bay Park and the Concord property development. And we will do our very best to continue to provide exceptional services for our 105,000 residents. So the next update is on the District Advisory Committee. And just a bit of background here. There has been a lot of discussion in the unincorporated community regarding whether there was equal representation throughout the district for the advisory board. So based on that feedback, a decision was made to update the NSPRD board bylaws to ensure that there was equal representation throughout the district. So that now those bylaws have been updated, and it has resulted in changes for the District Advisory Committee. So on the screen, it's just, this is the purpose of the DAC, to advise the NSPRD Board of Directors on the acquisition, design, planning, and the development of parks and recreation facilities, and on the programs, maintenance and operations of the district. So what's new with the District Advisory Committee based on the update? So again, we've changed the name. It used to be DAB, District Advisory Board, so now it's District Advisory Committee. We have 11 members. We've redrawn the sub areas. There's now 5 sub areas with equal population. It's approximately 20,000, a little bit more than that for each of the areas. The NCPRD Board of Directors will not have a seat on the District Advisory Committee. As you're aware, we previously had one of the Board of County Commissioners acting as the NCPRD Board with a voting seat, and that is no longer the case. The DAC members for the 4 unincorporated sub areas will be recruited and selected by the community. So that's a change. We have a community-led task force that is comprised of 6 residents in the unincorporated area, and it has been formed to develop a proposal for the recruitment process and the appointment of the DAC members. So where we're at now is that task force was asked to have their proposal due on the 31st of January. They have turned that in. Then next, that proposal was reviewed by the Committee for Citizen Involvement. So just so you know what that is, this Community for Citizen Involvement is a process-oriented committee which advises and assists the Board of County Commissioners in developing and implementing community involvement programs. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. They met last Monday. Candy and I both attended the meeting to observe, and they reviewed the proposal and made some comments and recommendations that will go via a policy session to the Board of County Commissioners acting as the NCPRD board. So timing-wise, what we're looking at, I would estimate probably the end of April or early May before we're going to have an up and running District Advisory Committee. So on the screen now is just, this is just a representation of the 5 sub areas. You can see we have City of Milwaukee in green, and we also have the other unincorporated areas. We have, again, 11 members, the 5 sub areas. We have 2 members from Milwaukee, and we have 2 each from the other unincorporated areas for a total of 8. And then we have 1 at large representing the community centers in the district. So now I'm going to turn it over to Heather to provide an update on our projects. Thank you.
Oh, Heather, you're muted.
All that great stuff I said. Thank you, Laura. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to jump in and talk about projects, and not only projects that are currently going on, but some that have been recently completed, and some of the heavy-hitting projects that we have in the planning phases. So starting with Elk Rock Island, you guys are very aware of Elk Rock, and I know it's near and dear to the city. It's hard to believe it, but it's already been 5 months since the wildfire broke out on the island and burned almost 2 acres of natural area. And because of that, we had some really unpredictable hazards on site that included downed trees, loose rocks. We had high soil erosion potential and also some trail damage and very sensitive vegetation. So with that, we worked jointly with the city, including with the Milwaukee PD, to determine basically what to do, and jointly decided that we would close it until March 31st of this year. And it was a difficult decision, but really important to both public safety, as well as trying to figure out how to best heal the island and start that work. So some of the efforts that have already occurred that the city, NCPRD, and local agencies have led to repair the damage and mitigate hazards includes actually removing some of those hazard trees. First, we had to conduct multiple site surveys to assess that damage and that risk, and then implementing monitoring of that, of a lot of things on site, including the understory, the soil, and the trees. We spread weed-free straw so that we could seed it with native seeds and really stabilize the soil to prevent further erosion. And we repaired 250 feet of trail and actually rerouting 2 sections. And as I referred to before, we worked jointly with the city and specifically with the Milwaukee PD to formalize closure. And a big part of that work was also the communications itself, because, you know, no one wants to see their public properties that they're used to loving and visiting shut down. So we really needed to let the public know that these areas weren't safe, and that we needed to get in there and start figuring out how to help the island heal. And so it was a really great partnership between the city and the district to develop website language for the landing page, to develop some really clear, succinct FAQs, to mail out some postcards and distribute flyers. We had social media updates and lots of signage. And I just want to thank the city and Kevin Kaysen, Tanya Williamson, their staff, Melina DeFrancesco, who worked on communications, because, you know, this wasn't in anybody's work plan, just like COVID, and everyone just stepped up in an enormous way. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done together. So a little bit about some other projects going on. I'm going to talk about a few things, starting with, let's see, this park and trail at Boardman Wetlands. So if you have had a chance, I hope you have, we have a great new park down in the Jennings Lodge area called the Park and Trail at Boardman Wetlands, because it will have an official name once we have a district advisory committee. But it's almost 6 acres. It has our first nature play playground in the district. It has outdoor learning areas, including some hands-on areas. It has benches, picnic tables, parking lot and sidewalk that promote access, and a really wonderful scenic boardwalk. It also has restored creek and wetland habitat. And this project was a really close partnership with the Oak Lodge Water Services District, as well as getting partner funds from Metro and the Oregon Parks and Rec Department. So this is just these are a couple of shots. This is what I'm talking about with sort of some hands-on education spots. So this is providing some access to the wetlands so people can actually go in and get their get some education hands-on. And this is a great shot of the extensive boardwalk on the site that lets people access all year round. It also has some wildlife viewing areas. And this is one of the great things about having a wildlife viewing area is someone recently spotted this horned grebe, which is a very uncommon diving bird. We don't tend to see these around here. And so we're hoping that in addition to, I just saw Lisa Beatty's comment about the nutria, in addition to some of the things we, you know, don't love to see in our natural areas, we also have some things that that are really great. And we're hoping this horned grebe is maybe just a harbinger of some great things to come. We also did a couple of soft surface paths in the last year or so, so I just wanted to highlight those. We had one at Kronberg. This was part of the master plan with the city. So the city installed the wonderful multi-use path and the elevated walkway to connect the Dogwood Park and Kellogg Lake area with McLaughlin Boulevard. Part of that was a soft surface path, and really the purpose of that path was to connect the multi-use path with the Kellogg Lake area and with an overlook. So that's what the soft surface trail has done. It also keeps people from kind of tromping on more sensitive vegetation if you give them a clear path. So that was a great thing to open in partnership with the city. And then another one was the North Clackamas Park soft surface trail. So we had a lot of social trails, we call them, kind of down closer to the creek, people wandering in and kind of making their way along there. And that can be pretty damaging to the riparian zone, including riparian habitat. So by putting in a new soft surface trail, we got, 0.2 miles of extra trail, extending the current trail system at North Clackamas Park, connecting to an overlook area, as well as a small boardwalk bridge. And that was just completed this summer. And just a quick shout out, that is another thanks to our Trails and Natural Areas folks. So Milwaukee Bay Park, this is one I'll spend just a little bit more time on tonight because it is right here in the city of Milwaukee, and most of you are very familiar with this project. We started teaming up with the city on this, really standing on the shoulders of a couple decades of work or more that the city had done. But when we came in to team up with the city, the real question was, how can we complete this park? And that's what we've been doing for over 3 years, is working with the city to figure out how to get the park completed in this grassy area that you see on the slide, mostly this green 3.5 acres. It's beautiful in a photograph. It's not super functional for recreation, and not really hospitable in terms of access, or, if you're not a goose, it's not the most inviting place. So we're trying to make a lot of improvements, and we're aiming for completion after about a year of construction. I'll talk about timeline in a second, but we hope to start construction in 2022. I have talked in the past with you about some of the details of public engagement. I wanted to just summarize tonight that we did reach over 1,300 people in our really extensive outreach process, and that's really been a great way to root this final design in the community. So the schematic design was developed in 2019. It has been the basis for all the work since. And I'm not going to go over the details here, but essentially you're taking a site and you're transforming it into a recreational amenity. And on the next slide, I was going to point out a few of the features. So we have this area down low, which is the flexible amphitheater space. And that's the kind of place we can program for concerts and movies and festivals. And there's so many possibilities there, but it's also a great informal space. If people are trying to gather in smaller groups, or throwing a Frisbee. A lot more options once we can gather again, but it'll be lovely to have that space. And then further up on the bank, because it is a pretty sloped site, we have a picnic terrace. We have some restrooms tucked behind that big old redwood tree. And we have a beautiful plaza up across from Monroe Street. And those are sort of the more urban elements that are adjacent to the trolley trail to kind of not just support the trail, but kind of deal with that urban interface. The trolley trail you really can't see super clearly in this picture, but it runs parallel to Oregon 99 to McLaughlin Boulevard, all the way up and down the site, ultimately making the connection with the 6 Mile trolley trail throughout the district. That plaza also, invites people down into the site. So we have a children's nature play area and an interactive water feature. And it really is meant to welcome families and to give people a safe place to be down at the waterfront, to not only play, but enjoy the views. And also, two things, last but not least, we have a lot of trails on the site, a lot of pathways, and they're all ADA accessible. So we take a site that's beautiful, but not very accessible, and we transform it to make it highly, highly accessible. We also have natural areas on the site. So right now with the grass, we don't have the best, sort of habitat values or, opportunities for vegetation. With this, we have a much more climate-friendly situation where we're creating some more tree canopy, more diverse vegetation, hopefully extending that riparian habitat upland a little bit, and really dealing very comprehensively with stormwater. So it's just really exciting, everything that's going into this site. And I wanted to talk a little bit about timeline and funding. So in order to get to construction in 2022, we have the 2 upcoming phases. We're completing contracts and funding now. So we've been working on really bringing together all the different pieces of funding, getting all of our contracts together, and we're taking an approach with what's called construction manager general contractor. It's what you used on Letting Library, where you bring the contractor in early. And so it's very exciting for us. It's newer for the county, so we've been investing a lot of work in that for the long term. We also have funding discussions ahead when our district advisory committee is up and running, so they can really learn about the project and support it and have ownership. From there, we go into engineering and pre-construction. And so that's the very exciting time when we take this schematic design and really drill down and get to all the specifics. And like I said, we'll have a contractor on board to kind of keep it real. We'll be going through land use approvals, preparing all our construction documents. And during this time that we're designing, we're also securing all of our funds. So while we have a great funding partnership lined up, we still have to secure those agreements, one by one by one. So it's a lot of important work coming up in the next fiscal year. we'll also be working on an IGA to support that as well, and then construction. So with that, I think I'll go just a little bit into funding before I turn into the next project. So for Milwaukee Bay Park, because we have a $9.6 million project cost, we really have had to be, very, I think, intentional about our funding strategy, really building partnerships that make sense for this particular project. And you can see from this chart, we have a big chunk of the project that is funded from NCPRD and the city, as well as, contributing chunks of our local share from the Metro bond measure that passed in 2019. But even with that, we still have some really important regional and state partnerships that get brought in, and that's what completes this funding pie. So I'm going to go to the next slide to give you a little bit more specifics, because I want to put this in the context of really letting you know where we are with this strategy. And also letting you know what actions are needed, because the council and the city has already taken some really important supportive actions for this funding plan, and there are still some to go. So we have the IGA that the district and city signed in December 2020, which allows for transfer of city funds allocated for the project to the district for construction. So that's a huge accomplishment, and I thank you very much for doing that. We also had the council support our grant application for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And that was incredibly important because we were recommended for over $1 million for that grant. It's now pending federal approval. So that's huge for the project. We also have the Metro City local share and the Metro NCPRD local share. And the bond determines the allocation, but there still is an engagement process and an IGA process that goes along for each of us as local agencies. So the council certainly still has an opportunity to support Milwaukee Bay Park in that effort with bond funding to the city. And because the city has 2 seats on the district advisory committee, the city can also be very active in supporting NCPRD's efforts to contribute bond funds toward Milwaukee Bay Park. So those are a couple areas of support. In addition, we have our system development charges funds that will be looking to contribute to this project. And that really, functionally comes through our annual budgeting process, but our DAC will also have discussion and visibility of that. So being able to participate in that as a city is also a really important way to support Milwaukee Bay Park. The council already supported 2 grant applications, and I just want to give you the status of those. The local government grant program just was reviewed by the advisory committee, and just last Friday was recommended for a $750,000 award, which is terrific. It'll go to formal approval at the state level to consider that recommendation and finalize it as an award. That happens late this month. And then we have an ODOT grant application in to their Oregon Community Paths program specifically to support the trolley trail. And again, we had support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for supporting us with a letter on that project. So that's under applicant review. We also have things like just annual budgeting where we might have, little bits of funding here and there for Milwaukee Bay Park in our general fund. And that's something that the DAC will have visibility of. So it's always a place to support Milwaukee Bay Park. There isn't an action on the following one, but the Milwaukee Parks Foundation is supporting the project and has been fundraising very actively. So that's, outstanding. And we're really excited that that local work is going on. And then finally, we have a Metro Capital Improvement Project grant program that is still working on the official solicitation. That's bond money as well. So when that gets shared, we'll have a chance to apply for that, and we'll be looking for council support from that as well. So with that, I know that's a lot of detail. I'm certainly happy to answer questions if you have further questions, but I did want to overview the Concord project as well. Officially called the Oak Lodge and Gladstone Community Projects, the development of the Concord site is another district-wide amenity that we're extremely excited about. And even though it isn't in the city boundaries, it's definitely part of our district and an amenity for all district residents. So we've been working on this site to look at how to transform the site in the community's vision. And we engaged a lot of people in that process. I'll talk to that in a second. But essentially what that community vision brought with some amount of detail is a community center with a large gym, a park, a library, and district offices. And we have construction tentatively scheduled for 22, contingent on funding. So the community process, much like Milwaukee Bay Park, really reached out to the community. We had workshops and open houses. We had surveys, but we also knew the limits of those and did, some more small focus groups, met with Spanish speakers and teens and some other groups to kind of round out our engagement. And I really appreciate the discussion you had earlier about community engagement. It's always an area of growth for us, and we're pleased with the fact that every project we do, we're able to do a little bit more and learn lessons from the past. So this was no exception, and it really helped us build a very solid vision. And then finally, I just wanted to show you a picture of the site plan. This is the master plan. So you have the community center building, which is the existing footprint, with the addition of a large gym on the east side, and the addition of a library building on the north side, as well as a park adjacent to the site. So all in all, at 6 acres, the master plan was just approved by our board in January. And again, construction 2022 contingent on funding. I will say that this, is not quite as far along as Milwaukee Bay Park. It was started, a bit later, but it's progressed really well. And so what it needs to do next is go into another phase of design, schematic design, and also funding plan refinement. So as this project develops and Milwaukee Bay Park project keeps developing, we're continuously talking about our funding packages, how things line up, which funds can go where, and how to ideally fund each project, because they are different projects and they have different, kind of appropriate funding sources. So we continue to have those discussions, and we'll be bringing those discussions to our DAC once the DAC is up and running, so they can provide us district-wide input as well. And with that, I just wanted to point out just a couple of other things that are next besides just the project work. We have an intergovernmental agreement update, the District City IGA, that we are wanting to make some progress on. So we've just had some initial conversations about what that would look like and what that process will be. Ideally, we'll do a little bit of work as a staff, but not wait too long before bringing it back to our elected officials for some input that can guide further staff work. We want to make sure we're hitting those priorities. So ultimately, the staff and the elected bodies will work together to make sure we have a great IGA. I should just mention also that for Milwaukee Bay Park, I can't remember who asked me this question originally, but we will need an IGA before we start construction. So ideally, this timing does work out that we can do the master IGA before Milwaukee Bay Park construction. There is also the possibility that we could do a separate IGA for Milwaukee Bay Park if we really had to. So just know that there are some options there. And then we have a master plan that we are really eager to undertake. So our biggest next step on that is just the staffing to do so and the scoping for that work. And we'd like to start that work in 21-22. That leads to really kicking off a capital improvement projects plan and a SDC update. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Candy.
I'm going to go ahead and start off with an update of current programming. This past year, in response to the pandemic, our staff has updated protocols to enhance safety, following CDC, OHA, and other guidance for programming and maintenance. Virtual programming was created for youth and adults. A virtual recreation center was created on our website, and our parks and trails have seen an increased use by visitors enjoying the outdoors. Our Meals on Wheels program has experienced a 39% increase due to homebound sheltering in place. We are currently offering adult virtual classes in fitness, mind and body, language, writing, and our youth sports, science, horseback riding, dance, and fitness programming. We are excited to be offering our Inclusion Bingo Boogie for individuals with disabilities or special needs. This program offers virtual bingo games followed by a themed dance that participants learn from the instructor. This past October, we offered a drive-through Boo Bash to allow residents to view Halloween decor themes safely from the safety of their seat in their car. It was great to see so many residents, even if from a distance, with over 1,000 people attending. Our famous Thanksgiving dinner fundraiser for our Meals on Wheels program was offered with pre-registration and drive-through pickup dinner to go. We are pleased to have served 200 additional meals in addition to the 260 Meals on Wheels delivered of the Thanksgiving dinner. In December, we held winter celebrations and visits with Santa virtually for over 290 youth attendees. This friendly elf interacted with families while they waited their turn to visit with Santa. As you can see here, participants drove through to pick up supplies for winter celebrations that included a dreidel for Hanukkah, paper for our Kwanzaa community handcraft, and a snowman ornament kit from Frosty the Snowman and Santa the day prior to this festive event. Spring resident registration begins next week, February 16th, for our virtual and select in-person programs. Our drive-through Chinese celebration meal pickup and goodie bag will be held next Friday on February 19th, and our annual Meals on Wheels campaign is coming up next month. This fundraiser is crucial to our Meals on Wheels program, and Bob's Red Mill has agreed to match up to $10,000 in donations again. As you can see, there are several ways to stay connected with NCPRD. If you haven't already, please sign up for our newsletter, The Outside Insider, that is distributed by email, or visit our website for the best updates about the district. I would like to thank you for allowing us to present tonight, and at this time, we can open up for any questions that you might have for us.
I had a question. I might have missed it, Heather. I think I saw lots of information about funding and costs associated with Milwaukee Bay Park, but I may have missed Concord Community Center and Boardman Wetlands. I was just curious about if you had an estimated total cost for the new community center. And then I was also curious, I don't think I'm not familiar enough with Boardman, so wondering if you know that offhand.
I don't know the total cost for that project that was completed with Oak Lodge or how that was split up, but it is something I could find out and get back to you on. For Concord, I didn't share a funding slide because the funding package is still very much in flux. But I don't know if, Laura, do you have any highlights you want to share specifically from that? Anything high level, just about, general funding sources?
Well, I believe the cost is split between the library and then NCPRD, and I believe the NCPRD portion is about 20 million. Is that right, Candy? Or 20 to 22 million, somewhere around there. And then the library portion, I believe, is 12 million. And I could be wrong on that. I'm just going off of memory. But there's multiple funding sources, just like on Milwaukee Bay Park. There's going to be the library district distribution. That's a special district, and so that will be used to pay a portion of the debt service payment that will be on that site. They're going to be issuing revenue bonds, both NCPRD and the libraries, or Clackamas County will do it on the behalf of everybody because they have a AAA rating and we can get a much better rate. There's going to be STCs, there's going to be Metro Local Share, there's going to be, I'm trying to think what else. I'm assuming that we're going to have grants. We have the Hoodview proceeds that will go into that. Candy, go ahead and jump in if you can think of other sources. There's a lot. I
think the key on the Concord, we just finished the plan. And so this next phase is where we will come up with a whole funding packet and plan. So we don't have it all configured. Before we started the project, we identified some possible sources, and kind of like Laura mentioned, there's a lot of things available or we could use. And so I know staff, was kind of weighing different things. So when we focused in on funding for Milwaukee Bay, we looked at different grants and things that led themselves to being more suited for Milwaukee Bay, or things that funding that might work for Concord, knowing that we had these two large projects that we're planning on pursuing literally at the same time. But Milwaukee Bay is advanced and already working on their funding package and moving forward, whereas Concord has just finished our plan. And then this next few months is when all that financial component will be finalized and start moving forward.
So you mentioned a bond in there. Was it, you said a revenue bond, not a geo bond? Is that right?
Yeah, not a geo bond. But again, we still have a couple years before we're going to, start construction. And so we will need to look at all of the different funding sources and see what we will end up doing. But I do know from the library side, there will be a revenue bond, and then most likely from the NSPRD side also.
What revenue are they pulling from?
Well, we just paid off the actual bond that we had issued when the district was formed, where we built the aquatic center and some parks. That was just paid off. So that freed up about $500,000 annual debt service payment. And so that would be, that the thought is we could issue another revenue bond. But again, this is very preliminary. We have to, same way that we worked out all the funding for Milwaukee Bay, we will need to work out all the funding for this very large project.
I watched the working group meeting in November or December when they presented their report and voted on both, on the Gladstone Library and this one. And in that package, it said something about one of the sort of, and I realize these things will change over time, but one of the funding sources identified in that package said that NCPRD would be selling property. And I wondered what property you were planning to sell.
So I can kind of speak to that just in general. Of course, I wasn't a part of the group that created that funding proposal plan of possibilities. And then just so that everyone's aware, when we move through this next phase, we'll be working with our DAC, our District Advisory Committee, to identify and finalize funding sources as we move forward. But that said, properties, we have a Vogel property that's kind of in an odd area of the district now with the exit of Happy Valley. And then I think we've had a couple other properties that we haven't really been able to develop or look at, maybe in the Clackamas area, that we would be looking at possibly selling. Change in the economy and the things that are happening right now, that may not be the most logical thing for us to be looking at, here in the next few months. So I think evaluation is going to be made for that as an option. But it did have property sale. It had possible revenue bonds. We've talked about possible geo bonds in the past. We've talked about, those types of things, which were on that chart, but nothing's been identified. It's final.
I had a couple other questions. One was, I thought you were going through the GMCG or whatever it is process at the end of last year. Has that happened?
We got approval. We got the exemption to do that, but we ended up holding off a little bit just because of COVID and some of the economic uncertainty. We didn't want to plow ahead too quickly. But we also have had the county hasn't done a lot of CMGC before, so we also kind of stepped back and have revisited the overall template. So we've invested a lot of work in that, which I think has paid off in the sense that we're also integrating, something more meaningful related to racial equity in contracting and workforce diversity, things that just were not in place before. But it's lining up well for timing. So what it means is that we'll actually put out an RFP, I think in March is the most likely scenario. And then that would start the recruitment and really kick off our next phase, because once we do that, we have probably about 2 months before we can do a project kickoff. And Councilor Beatty, I also wanted to address a question that I knew you had, and I meant to do it in my part of the presentation, but we are starting up work parties again, and I know people have been really wanting to get back into the ground, doing some good work in the natural areas, and so there are some work parties being planned for the spring. I know our natural areas folks are working with Solve as well, so please be on the lookout for some more action with the work parties.
Great. Did one this last weekend on Dave's Killer Bread property, and they're supposed to do another one this Saturday, but it remains to be seen if we'll be working outside in the snow this Saturday or not. The master plan you talked about, master planning, you mean just sort of district-wide, I take it?
Yeah.
I participated in a district-wide master planning process maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago, where we had a big thing at the Milwaukee Center and we sat down at big tables with, but that never came to fruition, or you're just looking to update that?
That did not come to fruition. It is part of our source documentation that we'll look at to see what was raised at that point. My understanding is a lot of things were happening about that time with transition in the district. And so what the planning work that was done, I guess, didn't really translate to some of the changes that were going on. And so it was not adopted. But we're definitely going to go through that and see what we can use from that in terms of inspiration. It's pretty amazing to look back and see that in that, 7 to 8 years, so much more emphasis on climate, sustainability, equity and inclusion. And so things that, just were not as much in your standard master planning radar are just, they're becoming givens. So it's really exciting in that way that we'll have a new plan, but hopefully we can build on some of the things we learned a few years ago so that we don't, we can take those results and still learn from them.
Okay, and then I think it's my last question. The DAC. So I was disappointed but not surprised to hear you say that the DAC won't be up and running before April or May. I sat in on the conference call or the sort of community conversation that Commissioner Savas organized in December, I guess it was. And it really struck me as odd that because I knew NCPRD had taken applications already months before for the DAC and was ready to interview. So now we have this really cumbersome process that's being established rather than just interviewing the people who had applied. And as I understood it, you had applications from all the 4 zones. So it wasn't a question of not having applicants from all the areas. It's really distressing to me that might be slowing down Milwaukee Bay Park, I guess. If these funding decisions about, if you want a new DAC to come into being and it'll take them a couple months to know each other and to get on their feet. And so if that group is supposed to make recommendations about the local share funding and these other things that were on your funding chart, it really seems to me that process has done us a huge disservice in the city of Milwaukee, and it should not have been dragged out the way it was. And it's very unfortunate that the interviews didn't go forward late last year and we didn't have a DAC up and running by now. I guess that's not really a question, but I would like to know to what degree you think the slowness of the DAC is slowing down Milwaukee Bay Park.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Councilor Beatty. I think luckily Milwaukee Bay Park can move forward with hiring a contractor and can move forward in design. So there's really no stoppage of work because of that. What realistically probably gets delayed is actually an approval of an IGA with Metro, but that money's for construction. So it's what we really need is to know more, have more certainty around the funding. So even if we have a delay in the discussions around the IGA for the Metro bond, it doesn't mean we can't keep designing. It just means we have more certainty of our target of all our secured funds versus having to find alternative funds once we get that IGA. So it doesn't stop anything. It just gives us more comfort knowing that those funds are in place. So, you know, we're very motivated to get our DAC up and running. We're rolling out an onboarding process and really hoping to get them fully up to speed fairly quickly so that they can start having some, you know, really meaningful and substantial discussions early on. And this is definitely one of the first things we want them to be able to start talking about, just the capital projects in general.
So I have two different questions. Since we're talking about Milwaukee Bay, I'll go with my second one first. Can you go back to the slide where you show the various pots of money and kind of go through and give us a more firm sense on the areas that we know are for sure and the areas that aren't, and then who the controlling entities are on those decisions?
Sure. So if you can see can you see the presentation, Mayor Gamba? So the city money is committed through the IGA. So that is, I would consider that, you know, well locked in. The Land and Water Conservation Fund, we have that recommendation. So while we don't have the agreement yet, I think procedurally, our project isn't stuck. It's the whole Oregon slate of projects that's stuck at the federal level. So I think now that we've had an administration turnover and things are moving, that should, I think, loosen up a bit, and those approvals should come for all the states. So that recommendation wouldn't change. It just needs to be formally approved as an award at the federal level. So that I would consider that funding very, you know, very secure. The Metro local share and NCPRD local share, those have to be articulated through a process, through an engagement process and through the IGA. But once we commit the IGAs, you know, we have that funding. And I think it's pretty safe to say the Milwaukee Bay Park project is a priority for both organizations. So I think that's a matter of process and discussion, but we expect that we'll be able to have Metro bond funding from both entities based on, you know, the current discussions that we've had to date. SDCs, we have SDC funds for the project, but we need to have the discussion to formalize their use. So I think it's, you know, I think putting SDCs toward the project, that's what they're there for. So that should be, again, a matter of process, but definitely a project that is appropriate for use of these funds. And then the state grant is similar. This LGGP grant is similar to the state grant where we have been recommended and we're just waiting for the formal award. This one's just from the state level. So I would say through this mark is where things are, thank you, Candy, for being my hand. Through that point where Candy has the cursor, that's really where the funding is more outlined and more secure. And then below that, we'll be waiting to hear more. We will need to have the OCP grant confirmation. We'll need to approve funds in our general fund. Milwaukee Bay Parks will need to complete their fundraising, and the regional Metro CIP grant would need to come through. So those are the ones those are the pieces I feel like we still really need to fit into the project.
So back on the Milwaukee NCPRD local share, since it's going to be a brand new DAC, I'm curious how you can be so sure that the DAC will approve that.
I can't predict what the DAC will do, and I apologize if I was implying that. What I'm confident in is that the project is appropriate for the Metro local share. The local share has a really long list of criteria and is really strongly guided by community engagement, climate resilience, and racial equity and inclusion. And Milwaukee Bay Park has really just thoroughly met those bond goals through and through. So there's only going to be so many projects that meet those goals thoroughly, and ultimately it will be up to the DAC to confirm that and also to confirm the amount. So there's always going to be a splitting up of that amount, and I can't say ultimately what will happen, but I know that the project is very well aligned with the criteria, and that we can discuss that with our DAC.
Okay, thank you. And then sort of bigger picture, longer term, I had forgotten that we had the second largest parks district in the state. What I was remembering was that we had one of the, if not the lowest permanent rate, it was the second lowest permanent rate or something like that. Has staff been talking about, or has anybody been talking about, the commissioners about attempting to, obviously not this year and probably not next year, but in the not too distant future, going back out to reestablish a new permanent rate?
I can speak to that. So one of the things that is going to be changing is INSPRD was a division of Business and Community Services. So effective July 1, that will change, and INSPRD will become a department in Clackamas County, reporting directly to the county administrator. And that gets us one step closer to trying to, I would say, spin off the district to be a special district with a separate board of directors. So I just want you to be aware of that. I mean, that is something we have been working towards for a long time. And the first step we needed to do was to separate BCS from INSPRD. We are now doing that in July 1. After we do that, then we can examine what we do to further make INSPRD independent and to actually increase that permanent tax rate. The other thing I would mention too is that we know, and we've been talking about the fact that we absolutely need a GEO bond. Almost every other parks district in the state of Oregon has their operating rate, and then they have a GEO bond that they just renew every 20 years. And we don't have that, and it's really hurt us because what we've been doing is we've been using our operating dollars, our 54 cents, to subsidize our capital projects, and we really should not be doing that. So the board is very aware of that. We mention to them every opportunity that we get that we need to do a GEO bond, and we will continue to do that. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments?
Well, I will just, it's a very minor thing, but I will tell you that the Parks Foundation has $45,000, has raised $45,000, and does hope to do more fundraising in the spring. We just had our meeting last night, and we'll probably be in touch with you, Heather, about some more ideas, you and Kelly. I mean, I think the real struggle for me with all of this is that we don't have any sort of expertise, and you and Kelly have heard me say this. We don't really have we haven't figured out the way to tap into larger donors, potential larger donors. You know, our $45,000 was raised, well, half of it almost from a foundation, and half of it from, you know, $100 or $50 donations, not large donors. And I really wish we had. I mean, unfortunately, nobody on the Parks Foundation board really has that background, although, I mean, a couple people have some of it, and we're definitely talking about how to do that, but it's not a natural fit for us.
Thanks for doing that work, by the way. I mean, that's a significant amount of fundraising, as you said, especially when you're looking at small donors. That's really impressive.
If you don't mind, I wanted to add one thing on Elk Rock. Are y'all okay with that? So I just want to underscore this has been an intense partnership between the city and NCPRD since the fire that I really have appreciated. we got a direct question about, is it really going to open, after March? And that is the plan. I will just tell you what's going into that decision making right now. So Julian, we kind of divided it up as the city's got the trees and NCPRD's got the plants and the trail work, but the trees are the hazard. So we have 3 large trees that had significant burn damage, but that Julian really is still watching to see if they will make it. So he wants to give it time to see. And then we also have quite a few other large trees that are potential erosion concerns, could fall due to erosion if winter storms get bad. So we're kind of waiting. We're trying to get past this winter storm season, see if these trees will make it. If they're not going to make it, then we're going to have to go get them out of there so that we can reopen. But I just want to acknowledge to council and to the community, particularly our friends in Island Station, this is a hardship. Having this be closed for this long, I know, is a challenge. So thank you for your patience. I really do appreciate it. It is a very difficult site to close. And so that is why the closure is so large. But yes, we are working very hard to make sure that we can hold to that date. And if it is going to change, I will let you know as soon as I can. We also are working, I just want to give a special shout out to Brenna Cruz. Again, the person I could not have survived COVID without, because this is a federal disaster area. So there's this whole other level of involvement and work that we're doing right now to work with FEMA on restoration work, because none of this is really, this is all work outside of budget. Let's just be honest, right? So how we actually can get federal resources in, because it's a disaster area, to do the work that we know we need to do is a whole other work item. So thank you, NCPRD, for your help. I've really appreciated being able to lean on your team. Kevin and Tanya and Melina have been wonderful. And I just want you all to know, and thanks to Peter, how intimately involved Julian is really on these tree assessments. So that's where we are. If you're ever hearing from folks and they're angry or upset or mad or just want to yell at somebody, they can call me, because I understand. I really do. And we're trying to get it back open.
Thanks, Kelly. We know how hard you're working on this and appreciate it very much. All right, anybody, any more questions pop in anybody's head? No? Well, great presentation, thank you. There was a lot of information in there. It was very interesting. And I know we'll be talking in the near future on lots of levels. And we look forward to continuing to move these projects along.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe that is the last item for the night. Is that correct, Scott? All right, then with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.